Welcome everybody to the realm of ridiculous, where we talk about Warhammer fantasy and all the reasons why it is very mean to you and me in a sense. But before we get started, if you enjoy this podcast and you want to support us, check us out at patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous, where you get access to the Discord, bloopers, as well as awesome HD posters and more. Check it out. Patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous, and make sure if you have any hankering for some merchandise, including shirts, hoodies, desk mats, dice, objective marker, etc. They are all actually, I think we're waiting to get new objective markers. All the other things, check them out in the description as well.
And you can get that sick Croxagore poster.
And you can get, oh yeah, that's right,
hulking abs. Sheesh.
That's
Man.
right. There is a brand new Croxagore poster as well. How could I possibly forget?
I consider myself very chronically single and very chronically straight, and even I was blushing a little bit at the poster.
You consider yourself chronically straight?
So I said it in my head because I thought it sounded like funny for like the bit. And now that it's now that it's out in the ether,
I don't believe you for a second. I don't believe you for a second.
What is that supposed to mean?
I've seen what you retweet. Where's the picture of like the dog?
What? When, where, how? Your Honor, he has no evidence.
Hold on, let me find the picture
of slander
of Whitney Houston.
All right, before this gets too far off the rails, we're here for fantasy stuff, right?
Hell yeah, we are.
Not any other person's interest in whatever they happen to retweet. Fantasy.
I found the dog.
Fantasy.
Here he is.
Oh, I know the dog.
Oh, you know the dog.
I know the dog.
All right.
I knew exactly what you meant when you meant the dog. I'm not sure I have that dog in me, but we'll see.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, so Bricky, are you ready for your quote?
I'm ready for the quote.
You're ready for the quote? All right, let's go. I have faith in you. You're what, 2 for 4? Not bad considering you don't know fantasy, right?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I'm trying my best.
Yeah. Okay, so, quote, "Our armies are the finest in creation, swift where our foes are lumbering, and cultured where they are barbaric. Give no thought to failure nor defeat. We are the children of blank, and we shall prevail."
This sounds like elves.
This is 100% elves.
Yep, I was like hoity-toity, kind of like, yeah, I was like, this is elves.
We are the children of Ulthuan, and we shall prevail.
I wouldn't even have gotten it if I like Ulthuan. I wouldn't
Really?
No, I don't know who the hell Ulthuan is.
Well, we've talked about Ulthuan being like their main little island hub before. Like we talked about that in like the Skaven episode. I feel like we might have talked about it in the Humi episode. We've brought up that Ulthuan is like their home, you know, where that big vortex is, right?
I'm too used to like hearing Ulthway.
Oh, fair enough. You're so 40k pilled that Ulthuan just is. Well,
yeah, which is also elves, in fairness, so that does work.
Yeah, and so for like today's episode, if you have sort of like a cursory knowledge of just fantasy elves in general, you're gonna have sort of like a fairly decent idea of basic elves and how they function in Warhammer fantasy. I mean, they do branch off, and we will talk about them, but usually you have a certain picture in your head when you imagine just your basic elves in fantasy. Like, they're really good with magic, they have ridiculously long lifespans, they're prideful, they are really arrogant. To go along with that arrogance, they have a mind-numbing amount of hubris, and that ends up causing them a lot of problems. Like any good fantasy race, oh boy, do they hate chaos. But they actually start out like relatively like compassionate and understanding. They have a willingness to learn. They have a willingness to explore. They coexist with other races. And apparently elves put a lot of importance on their hair. Like, specifically how long their hair gets is a sign of like how important you are, how good of a fighter you are. And so they take their time to like really like decorate them and like put ornaments in their hair, because like the hair is like, oh, that's important to us. So, from the outset, they're kind of like your standard elves, but it's going to get a little more complicated. That's just sort of like, how the elves are right now.
Wait, so real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So Shai says, so Bricky does not get confused. It's elves, not Eldar. It's Asur, not Azuriani. It's Druchii, not Druchari. And it's Asrai, not Exodites. Thank God I'm not going to get confused. Yeah, thank goodness for that.
Well, so there is going to be a very important deity for the elves called Asurian, and not Asuriani.
Oh Lord, I mean I get it. It's this is a template that was based off of all the other stuff, but I am going to make a mistake.
Yeah, that's okay though. We all make mistakes. It happens. It's good.
It does. Wait, they also put a lot of emphasis on their hair.
Yes.
Like having like really long, beautiful, braided, fancy hair is a sign of power.
Yes, it is a sign of how important you are.
Oh no, they found a way to make the hotter elves the stronger elves.
Yep. And so, like we said in previous episodes, elves were seeded in fantasy by the old ones. And they were specifically taught their really good magic by the Slan. Specifically, the Slan are like, hey, elves, we're gonna teach you some fancy magic. And once the elves became advanced enough, the old ones were like, all right, cool. You've done really good with the elves, Slan. They're learning well, so we're just gonna transplant them onto Ulthuan, which is like that big island with like the little sort of hole in the middle of it. And also, they're gonna be like, hey, elves, before you go, understand that chaos is awful. Avoid anything chaos. Chaos juice is very bad for you. Do not drink it.
Isn't this the place that has like the giant swirling vortex at all times?
Yes, we will get to that too. Yes,
okay,
this is the place that has that. Yeah, it's got that big hole in the middle. I guess it kind of looks like an eyeball a little bit, like or like a crescent moon, maybe like a Sailor Moon crescent moon. But also, even though the elves were taught magic and they were seeded by the old ones and they were taught by the Slan, they end up with like this different deity worship system. So they don't worship the old ones, they don't worship the Slan, they have this worship around the phoenix god, Asurian, and this elven pantheon of gods, which is like this whole laundry list of gods that are split into either the, oh god, I'm gonna butcher these names, it's either the Kadai, which are like the good gods of like nature and happy things, and then you have the Sithari, which are like the underworld gods of sort of like negative stuff like murder and violence and treachery and all that. Those are the bad gods.
But wait, they're the bad gods, but they're not chaos.
They're not chaos. This is the elven pantheon of gods. So they're the good gods and they're like the bad gods.
Okay.
Like
so
the underworld. So it would be like Zeus to Hades.
But are they like bad gods? Or like is hate, because Hades isn't like bad, so to speak.
Well, I mean, one of the Sithari gods is Caine, and he is literally the Lord of Murder.
Oh, the Lord of Murder?
Yeah, he is literally the Lord of Murder. We'll talk about him a little bit.
Okay, as opposed to the avatar of also Caine in 40K, which is the god of war.
Well, I guess Caine would also be like the god of like murder, war, battle, bloodshed, sort of all of those negative pent up, So, kind of, yeah.
Okay, but they're both named Caine, Khaine.
Yeah, but
God damn it,
he's elven. He's specific. Yeah.
Okay.
But at the moment, the old ones, they're digging the elves, they're prospering, they're becoming really good with magic, they understand how corrupting chaos can be, and I think, generally speaking, the elves in fantasy are a little more resistant to chaos because they've been taught very early, like, hey, chaos bad, don't do that. And they start setting up their own towns, cities, governments. Most of their regions are led by like princes, princesses, maybe an archmage here or there. They have like elven councils where they decide how to make Ulthuan prosper, and everything's pretty cool. Everything's going well. Everything is going according to the Old One's great plan. But then this pesky little thing called the Great Catastrophe happens. You know, remember when the gates just implode on themselves?
Damn it,
you know?
I was hoping you were going to do like this pesky little thing called the humans arrive. And I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Humans.
Let's go.
But the two poles implode, giant chaos warp portals, and everything becomes a little less ideal for the elves. So while we know that the lizardmen at the time are shouldering, you know, a brunt of the load trying to get rid of chaos, the elves are actually doing a fair job of defending Ulthuan from chaos. They're putting that magic that they learned from the Slan to really good use, you know, and they're putting up a fight for Ulthuan. It's not good enough, and they're getting kind of dunked on, but they're at least putting up a resistance. So it kind of sucks to be on Ulthuan right now, and even though they're putting up a fight, it kind of looks like Ulthuan's gonna get just straight up overrun by chaos.
I mean, that's a little bit surprising too, because okay, I'm gonna try to tap into my World War II knowledge right here. It's not gonna go.
Tap.
It's not gonna go well. But like,
tap. Let's go.
Wasn't like a really important part of the reason why like Britain didn't get taken over is because it's like a big ass island, and they were able to defend it because it's a big ass island, and it, you know, makes things easy. I would assume that the elves have like not the hardest time defending chaos because they have just a big ass island.
I mean, actually, I think that's fair. Like, it is a lot harder to like invade just like an island, you know, because you're tasked with like sort of taking the shores, and it's a lot easier to defend all of those shores. So
I was also about to say, but demons can also just like go open like a portal. So, I wasn't sure if the Eldar had like the ability to be like, you can't portal here. No.
Nah,
the elves. I'm sorry, the elves, not the Eldar. The elves. I'm sorry.
I didn't even hear it, to be honest with you. I didn't even hear you say Eldar. That's okay. I feel like we're gonna be making that teensy tiny mistake a couple times. Yeah, because we are very 40K. I would be shocked if I didn't do it a few times this episode too.
Okay, all right. So the elves would have like a no zone, but I don't know.
Yeah, not that I know of, but it's also the Great Catastrophe where there's just so much chaos floating around that I'm not even sure them having an island matters. So, now we get to talk about the first Phoenix King of the Elves. So while all of this shit is hitting the fan, the elves have gotten, say, a little desperate. They see the writing on the walls. They realize that there is no way that they're going to be able to keep defending Ulthuan from the demons. So they start just throwing prayers and offerings to the shrine of Asurion, hoping that something sticks and they get an answer, anything. And specifically, an elf named Aenarion was like, look, Asurion, you look, just take me as a sacrifice. Just please save my people. And in the shrine of Asurion, there's like this big wall of fire. And he walks through it, and he just walks himself in, and he's like, I'm the sacrifice, take me. And so he starts burning up. And wouldn't you know it, right when it looked like the fire was going to consume Aenarion and kill him and just leave nothing but ash, he steps out from it. No burns, no scars, and he is empowered by the will and the spirit of Asurion. And he would be the first Phoenix King, and he is now juiced to the gills by Asurion and so much stronger than he was before, and now he gets to ride this dope-ass dragon named Indraugnir.
Okay, he's really dripped out.
Oh, yeah. Phoenix Kings get a little bit of drip.
Wait, so, Phoenix Kings.
Yes, he is the Phoenix King now. He is the Phoenix King of the Elves.
As opposed to a Phoenix Lord. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now remember, all of this lore was first. Right? So
I know.
Right?
I know.
Right?
I'm not doing like they took from the 40K. I'm doing.
It's just very similar. There's so many similarities, right?
I'm groaning from the level of like copy your homework we're at now.
Yeah, yep. And so, with the rise of the first Phoenix King of the Elves, Ulthuan finally has some hope. And all of the armies of Ulthuan rally to the Phoenix King and manage to temporarily drive chaos away from Ulthuan. It's not permanent, but still pretty impressive considering they had their backs against the wall and the great catastrophe is just spewing chaos everywhere. Bit of a problem, though, because there is, you know Keepers of Secrets, right?
Yeah, of course.
There's a named one named Inkari that shows up and kills Aenarion's wife.
Okay, that's not great.
Nope. That is the Ever Queen. We'll talk about Ever Queens in a second. And in this attack by Inkari, his children, Morelian and good old his daughter Yvraine.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
They are missing and presumed dead. I thought you would like that one of his daughters was named Yvraine. I thought you would just love that.
Is this like the Keeper of Secrets? Is this Shalaxi Hellbane, or is this just a Keeper of Secrets?
This is a Keeper of Secrets named Inkari.
Oh wait, or is Shalaxi, or the named ones in Warhammer? Wait, did we talk about? Was there a Scarbrand in the prior thing? Scarbrand's in fantasy, right? Like I think he's in fantasy.
Know. I haven't seen him show up in fantasy yet, but again, like chaos can exist in fantasy and 40K simultaneously, so it wouldn't surprise me, because like Kairos Fate Weaver is in fantasy too, so could be.
Okay, cool. Because I thought I remember playing a Scarbrand in like the Total War game. Mm-hmm. Okay, so but the big one is Nakari. Gotcha. Nakari looks. I mean, I was gonna say looks evil, but that's a little bit like So good point.
Because it's a greater demon of Slaanesh. So
yes.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, Aenarion not super happy about this, and he kind of gets this like blood boiling revenge brewing in his gut. So much so that he's like, you know what, Chaos? I am sick of your shit. I am going to the altar of Caine, the Lord of Murder, Blood, and War. And at his altar, there's this cursed sword of unfathomable power. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to absolutely your shit up. And while the elves right now are united under Aenarion, and they think he's pretty swell, most of them learn about his plans, and they're like, hey, Aenarion, maybe don't do that. Don't do that. Because it's probably a bad idea. And even as he gets to the altar of Caine, and he's looking for the sword, literally, the spirit of his wife shows up. The dead spirit shows up and is like, babe, no. But...
Wait, I'm sorry. What do you mean, babe, no? Elaborate.
Like even she's like, you really don't want to do this. You don't want to grab that sword of Caine.
Okay.
It's cursed. It's bad, babe. No.
I was expecting perhaps like a bit. I don't know, a bit more than that. Also, this is. I know that we have like spirits and all that kind of fun jazz in all these worlds, but it's just so funny how often I feel like people are dying and they're just like, you know what? Nah.
You know what? Nah.
It's like Croak. Like Croak died, and he's
That's
like, you know
true.
what? You know what? I'm just not gonna do that.
Yeah, him dying actually juiced him up because he was like, oh, finally, I don't have to worry about that stupid body.
I've chosen to live.
I've chosen to. What do we say to the god of death?
Not today.
Not today.
Ah, okay. What's that from?
Game of Thrones.
Oh, I haven't seen Game of Thrones.
I mean, it was such a prevalent meme. It's fine.
I know of the meme.
Like, you probably know of the Red Wedding, even though you've never watched it, right?
I'm sorry to derail us, but, you know, like, derailing is half this podcast. So I've watched...
More than half.
I watched, like, 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, but way back in the day, my sister was a really big fan of True Blood. So I watched, like, the first season of True Blood on HBO. It's, like, the vampire-y show. And I was like, wow, this is just like a whole lot of random nudity, love, like weird love triangles, blood and gore and sex. And then I went to Game of Thrones and I was like, wow, blood and sex, nudity, and like love, like incest and love triangles. I've seen this before, and then I never watched another episode.
You at least got to the part where old Kinslayer does the funky chicken dance with his sister. Yep.
There's a lot of interesting things there. Anyway, so Elden wife is like Elven. Wife.
Wow, it was the Elden Lord now.
The Elden, Mikola, you twink, get off
you,
for dawn,
Bale.
Okay, so they tell him no, but I'm assuming he's like, nah, I'd win, and he grabs it anyway.
Yeah, we've got that elven hubris, we've got vengeful anger, we've got arrogance. It's all on full display here, and Aenarion takes up the blade anyway. Now, while this sword is cursed to the gills, it's also super cracked, because this thing is known as the Widowmaker, the Godslayer, the Doom of Worlds, Doomfang, and of course, the Sword of Caine.
I feel like I've heard Doomfang before. That sounds familiar.
I thought it sounded like that character in Overwatch with the big fist, but I think that's
Doomfist. Yeah, that one's a little bit more obvious. All right.
But this is just how cracked this thing is. This thing is potentially stronger than Gal Maraz, the Warhammer. It is also, like, stronger than apparently any other mortal weapon, super capable of slaying gods, hence the Godslayer name. Like, this is a world-changing weapon in the hands of Aenarion, who is, like, the Phoenix King. And with this weapon and Asurion's blessings, he's about to go on a goddamn tear. But...
hell yeah.
It's gonna cost him, because apparently drawing this blade from the altar curses your lineage and your bloodline forever. So there is a price to be paid.
So curses, as in like the Caine will curse you in a way.
Yes, there is whole bloodline, his whole lineage cursed forever.
Even though he's like kind of like, even though he's your god, right? Yeah. Because the Eldar gods. Elven gods, the elven gods are not kind souls necessarily naturally. Like they don't have. I mean, I guess they also hate chaos, but they're not necessarily all nice.
Yeah, and well, I get true.
I guess they're not all nice in 40K either. But you know,
technically, this sword is not cursed. Air quotes. It's literally a sword that was meant to be used by Caine, who is the god of war and murder. So really, mortals shouldn't be using it because, you know, using a god's weapon is probably gonna, you know, fizz out your brain a little bit. So while it already kind of sucked to be on Ulthuan before because you've got routine chaos invasions of stuff, the Sword of Caine is kind of starting to make Aenarion a bit more mean and a bit more blood hungry. Like, he is absolutely, like, tearing through chaos and stuff, but now there's, like, a lot more blood sport, a lot more gladiatorial combat happening. He's much more short-tempered with his friends. His ruling decisions become much more, like, brutal. He's a lot more prone to just flying off the handle, and he's really not nice anymore. He does end up remarrying and having a child with a woman named Morathi, who was a Slaaneshi prisoner that he had to free. Their child is named Malekith. He's going to be super important later. So, like, while it's cool that Aenarion is, like, you know, killing chaos and everything, his mood doesn't exactly make things, like, really cool on Ulthuan, so it's not, like, super great to be in Ulthuan, because there's chaos, and it's like, hey, chaos is dying, but then it's like, ooh, Aenarion's kind of like, he's changed. That sword has changed him.
Well, he's not having the best of times, I imagine. I'm assuming he's like, God, I love murder.
Yeah, he loves the gladiatorial combat. He loves the blood sport. He is more or less becoming like, Caine's avatar, more or less.
Or, I guess, Caine's avatar, not to be confused with the avatar,
of Caine.
Let's not get
40K.
though I imagine it's like not so much Caine's avatar. What's the phrase? Like chosen disciple or kind of thing. Yeah, it does look a little familiar. Sean, not gonna lie.
Caine looks very familiar in 40K and fantasy. So it is what it is.
I almost feel like this isn't necessarily a podcast that's going to get people into fantasy. It's not going to get new people into fantasy. It's going to get 40K players into fantasy.
Well, that is part of the Venn diagram that needs to be filled.
That is kind of where we're headed in a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. All right. So it's also around this time that the elves are like, look, it's great that Aenarion's doing this, but like we need to figure out how to get rid of chaos fully. And so they come up with the idea for the Great Vortex, the big blue vacuum that's sucking up all the excess chaos funk and spitting it out through space, so chaos has to fuck off. And this was done by an archmage named Caledor Dragon Tamer. And he's using like powerful waystones and magic to sort of like, it's gonna redirect the flow of energy with all these waystones and powerful magic into this giant vortex. But the vortex takes a long time and a lot of magic to form. Like they needed the Slann, and they needed every archmage in Ulthuan, all of them, even Caledor. And while they're making preparations and trying to get all this done, chaos starts going crazy because they're like, oh, we see what you're trying to do. And so a lot of chaos forces start trying to jump Ulthuan, but Aenarion, he kind of goes God mode because he needs to buy time. And in order to buy time, he goes with the Sword of Caine and kills 4 greater demons all by himself.
All right, that's a little shenanigans right there. He
kills a bloodthirster. He kills a great unclean one. He kills that punk ass bitch Inkari who killed his wife, and he kills Kairos Fateweaver.
Oh no, he killed my babbling two-bird-head boy.
The babbling brook, he kills him. Well, kills, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is not the Emperor's sword. Like they come back.
They do.
Okay.
They do.
I wonder, clearly he's okay, so would you akin him to more along the line, like at first I thought this was like the Karl Franz. Is he more like the Sigmar for the elves?
Yeah. Aenarion, much more like a Sigmar to the elves. A Sigmar that kind of gets a little corrupted, right? So maybe if Sigmar was never able to really fully overcome the Crown of Sorcery.
Sure.
Maybe.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure if this was like the faction leader man, like the Karl Franz, or if this was more along the lines of like the guy they strive to be. Well, maybe not strive to be, but you get the point. Yeah,
they would strive to be Aenarion before he pulled out the Sword of Caine.
Man just rolls through 4 greater demons. Jesus.
4 greater. But to be fair, he does roll through them, but in that fight, he is mortally wounded. But the Great Vortex is formed. Problem with the forming of the Great Vortex is it traps all of the Archmages and Caledor inside of it.
Oh.
But hey, chaos is gone. Right? Well, chaos isn't gone, but the poles are significantly drained. There's not overflowing chaos. Things have been rebalanced. So, you gotta you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet, And in Aenarion's final act before he dies, he would be flown back to the Shrine of Caine by his dragon in Draupnir and plunges the sword back into the altar, praying that none would ever draw it again, because he finally kind of realizes, like, ooh, this kind of was a mistake, but, like, I kind of had to do it for my people,
Oh, okay. So well, unlike Sigmar, he's not sticking around then.
No, he's not sticking around. He dies. He dies.
Okay,
So-
well,
go ahead.
okay. So he's like, is he like martyred? Well, I'm sure you're gonna get there, but I'm assuming he's like martyred in a way.
I can't remember if they do martyr him. I mean, they must to a degree, because even though like he died,
But
he
how do
did
you-
basically like save them, right? He killed
okay.
4 greater demons, made sure that the vortex got formed, but he was very, very like, he was kind of savage too at the end, like
How do you pronounce his name again?
Aenarion.
Aenarion. Okay.
Yeah, Aenarion.
So, I just the way it sounds, it kind of gives me the vibe of like Eldar being like for the realm and with the power of Aenarion kind of stuff, like before they go into battle or some kind of crap like that, you know?
Yeah, that does. Well, I don't think they do that. Honestly.
Okay. I couldn't tell because very often it's like the others in the Empire, like Sigmar bless us, you know.
Oh yes, yeah. With the Empire of Man, it's like, oh, well, for the glory of Sigmar. But Sigmar also has a literal religion.
That's true.
After
That's
him,
true.
like he has the Sigmarite cult. So
that's very, very true. And you've also got Grim Face McAsshole guy who like kind of helps with that.
Grim face McAsshole.
I forget
You mean Volkmar?
Volkmar the Grim, thank you. Yeah, that's his name. I only remember the Grim part because it's the funny part.
Yeah, and he's not even that grim. He just gave himself that name because he thought it sounded cool.
Meanwhile, what's his buckets?
Grim face McAsshole. That's great. I'm gonna jot that down for like a merch idea too.
Meanwhile, his golden buddy next to him is just like, "Oh, don't worry, I paid for the train fare. Didn't
Yeah.
actually pay for the train fare
With lead.
with lead." All right. Anyway,
So, aside
so-
from the fact, go ahead.
I was curious about this part here. So Shai says he was anointed by their main god, created the system of Phoenix Kings, and sacrificed his life to save his world. But he also cursed his whole lineage with Caine's sword, and his actions eventually will lead to some real shitty things. So he's like 50-50.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like the scales of justice, where it's like they're kind of balanced because he does a lot of good stuff, but then that sort of Caine thing is gonna lead to a lot of not great stuff. So yeah, yeah. But aside from the fact that at this time your Phoenix King is dead, things are looking up in Ulthuan. You know, granted, they need a new king, but again, chaos held at bay, and Ulthuan not rubble. So, but again, problem is they need a new king. And like we already said, elves have a bit of an ego, bit of hubris, ton of arrogance, and so all the noble families are like jockeying for position for the next Phoenix King to be from their region, or to be their prince, or to be their princess. And they're doing, essentially, they're doing everything outside of actual violence and fighting to sort of like prop up their person to be Phoenix King. And apparently the way elves decide the Phoenix King is apparently it is specifically a year after the Phoenix King dies. You need to have picked a new Phoenix King. And I think they reserve 30 days for the election. And then the Phoenix King always gets an Everqueen. But the Everqueen isn't elected. The Everqueen is just like a hereditary line. It is just hereditary. The Everqueen is always like passed down. I'm not sure if it's just because they want the queen's lineage to be like pure. But yeah, so you got your Phoenix King and your Everqueen.
It's a lot better than what happened with the last time we talked about this in the recent episode with all the inbreeding.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit better than that, so that's good.
Yeah. And so now Malekith, who is that son that Aenarion had with Morathi, is thinking, he's like, oh, I'm a shoo-in for this. Like, I got the noble blood of the last Phoenix King. He's actually really solid military leader, really great with magic. Even for an elf, he's like really good with magic. And everyone's like, oh, Malekith does have a super bright future in Ulthuan. Few problems with Malekith, though, and a few reasons why people are like, maybe he shouldn't be leader. The elves are worried that Malekith was raised under Aenarion when he was at his worst under the influence of the Sword of Caine, so surely he must be a little bit brain damaged. There's got to be something wrong with the clock ticking upstairs. And to be fair, Malekith was kind of a hothead, and he was kind of prone to making rash decisions. They also worried about the whole Sword of Caine thing in general because, it cursed Aenarion's lineage forever. And the sort of thing that sealed his fate for not being the next Phoenix King is Aenarion's other two children, Yvraine and Morelion. They were actually found alive, which brings up a problem because Yvraine is the rightful Everqueen, and she wants no part in marrying her half-brother Malekith as Phoenix King.
Also, isn't she cursed?
Well,
no?
I wonder if they suggest that Yvraine isn't cursed because she was born maybe before he drew the Sword of Caine, and maybe it's just his lineage since then? Because I don't think anything really super bad happens to Yvraine.
Well, does that mean that... Okay, so if he drew the sword and then he just didn't bone anyone, does that mean it's just him? Or, I'm assuming it curses his lineage as in, the rest of his folks.
Yeah, well, so after he pulled it, he does bone... he has a child with Morathi.
Oh,
and that's how you get Malekith, because he had already been cursed then, so his lineage...
Oh, right, sorry, right? Malekith's technically one of his... That's true, yes.
It's one of his new kids.
It's one of his new kids, correct. So Yvraine is chilling, but Malekith is not.
Yeah. And Morathi... there's a picture of Morathi. She seems nice, right?
Oh, she reminds... So, I'm getting in... I'm finally playing Baldur's Gate, right?
Oh, yeah, let's go!
She reminds me a little bit of Will's patron devil I just met, Missoura.
Oh, yeah.
Who's kind of a baddie, don't get me wrong, but she's also a royal bitch.
Welcome to every Baldur's Gate 3 player ever when it comes to her, by the way. That is how Well, that's just how everybody that plays the game feels.
Oh, yeah, she's a baddie, but a royal bitch.
Yep. That's everybody, dude. Everybody feels that way about her.
Hell yeah. All right.
But eventually... go ahead.
Does she seem... So, okay. I don't want to judge a book by its cover.
She is exactly what you think she is.
Okay, so she's evil as shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, cool. Because she was riding like a demonic flying unicorn, and also casting black magic out of her arm.
Yeah,
she could wear a bit more armor. I'd argue this is straight out of World of Warcraft bikini armor. But you know what?
Yeah, kinda.
I'm sure this was back in like 2002. So whatever, we can chill.
Yep. And eventually, Malekith, he accepts. Okay, I guess I'm not going to be Phoenix King, and he kind of kneels graciously before the chosen Phoenix King. His name is Belshazzar, or at least he pretends to. He's like, okay, fine, I'll graciously accept defeat, but he's kind of coping and seething a little bit. And of course, Morathi, his mother, is furious, and she thinks it's absolute bullshit that Malekith is being passed over. She brings up a holy fit, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Yes, and that is her in the Total War games, if you were curious, Bricky.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm so glad we made sure to put the red jewel so we know where the nipple is, despite the fact that it's being covered. Thank God for that one.
Yep. I mean, she's fit, though. You gotta give her, she's fit.
Oh, yeah, you got to get... I mean, yeah, that's fine, but also, what the hell? So anyway, she's pissed off.
Yep. And actually now, it's a really amazing time to be Elven. They basically have this little golden age. They are actually expanding and exploring the lands outside of Ulthuan now. They're settling on the mainlands. Malekith is out exploring, but he is coping and seething and mauling hard from not being king, but he's kind of keeping that close to his chest. He's not making it obvious. He's like, okay, at least let me go out, let me distance myself from the Phoenix King, let me be productive, and, maybe my time will eventually come. And in one of the most unheard of fantasy things ever, the elves, with the help of Malekith, who makes first contact with them, actually become allies with the dwarves. So they're on friendly terms with the dwarves, and they start fighting like the greenskins together as friends, as allies. And Malekith making pretty good name for himself right now. And the elves are like, hey, not bad, Malekith. And even the Phoenix King is like, cool, you're going to be my new ambassador to the dwarves. Good job, Malekith. Thumbs up. And while Malekith is out exploring, he finds these crazy abandoned ruins in the icy hellscapes beyond like even like the Empire Bretonne. He finds like this icy hellscape, and he finds these ruins, and he's not really sure whose ruins they belong to, because I'm pretty sure they're very obviously not human, they're not lizardmen, they're not elven, and they're not dwarven. They are just these spooky frozen ruins. And in these spooky frozen ruins, he finds this weird-looking crown circlet. And it's all, like, twisted. It's got, like, it looks like it has, like, kind of antlers circling around it. I think it's specifically called the Circlet of Iron. And it looks very evil. This crown looks super evil. And, of course, instead of ignoring the obviously evil-infused crown, what do you think he does, Bricky?
I love it every single time they just see this thing. They're like, damn, I love power. Couldn't be me. Only the weak people get infected or get corrupted. And here we are once again.
Yep, he puts this freaky thing on, and wham! His spirit takes this journey through all of the realms of chaos. Like, he is perceiving everything. He goes schmoving through the realm of Tzeentch. He goes schmoving through the realm of Khorne, Nurgle, the whole 9 yards. He can see the Lizardman territory. He can see the Elven territory. He is literally perceiving everything when he puts this crown on. And so the crown also gives him this absolutely massive power boost. And if Malekith wasn't already like a strong, cocky, arrogant son of a bitch before, now he's like just roided up on his own arrogance with these new powers. And I think his mindset is literally like, you know, if I wanted to, I could probably control chaos with these new powers.
So that's what he thinks?
Yeah, that's what he thinks. I think he's of the mind, he's like, you know what, I could probably control chaos, maybe.
Maybe.
But things are going maybe a little too well in Ulthuan, and stop me if this sounds familiar to you, but they start partying a little too much.
Stop. This sounds familiar to me.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, goody. Okay, so wait, I'm sorry. One more time. Which person grabbed the crown?
Malekith.
It was Malekith, right? Okay. So, oh no.
They start partying a little too much. They maybe get a little too hedonistic. They start giving into the pleasures of the flesh a little too often. And, you know, things are getting a little out of control because while they're doing all this, there is the budding problem of the cult of pleasure.
God. Stop. I've heard this one before.
Yep, it is the cult of pleasure, and it is dedicated to Slaanesh, and the cult of pleasure actually founded, and all the followers follow his mother, Morathi.
Do you mean the one that's a spitting image of a Dark Eldar succubus?
Yeah, pretty much.
Great. So Malekith, not the dog from Elden Ring that's been having a hard time for this whole episode, has the super duper evil crown, and now they have a whole bunch of cults dedicated to pleasure with their barely clothed mom.
Yep. And the cult is gaining maybe a little too much prominence in Ulthuan, and people are like, hey, Belshazzar, you should probably do something about this, but he's getting really wishy-washy because he's like, but we've been prospering so much, I don't want to just like start murdering my people, and he's just very on the fence about what he should be doing. And the elves getting a little sick of it, you know? They're getting a little sick of Belshazzar being wishy-washy. They want him to take action against the Cult of Pleasure because it's getting out of hand, because it's Slaanesh. What are you doing? You should be doing something. And also, so with the Cults of Pleasure, it should be noted that so Slaanesh in fantasy does really love eating elven souls, because they are basically damn near immortal beings that have had a lot of time to marinate in the flavor of excess.
Stop.
Oh.
No, I'm done. I'm done. Yeah, that was my last one. All right. Yeah,
but she loves the way the souls taste, but souls in fantasy aren't necessarily predetermined to go flying to Slaanesh the way they are in 40k. She will prioritize going for them, but they're not sort of like predetermined to do it. And it's also around this point that Malekith has he's making his way back to Ulthuan. He's juiced up. He's got the circlet of iron, and he sees everything going on. He's like, "Oh God, I need to do something about the Cult of Pleasure. You know, I need to help the people." And I'm sure it was a self-serving thing, because he wanted to make a claim to the throne. And even when he finds out that his own mother is leading the Cult of Pleasure, he doesn't really have any emotions about it. He's just like, fuck this bitch. And he locks her ass up with the rest of the Cult of Pleasure, because he goes on a tear and he starts getting rid of the Cult of Pleasure. He starts locking them up and all this stuff. And it looks like he's really like cleaning house.
No, don't do that. No, don't put the Cult of Pleasure in cuffs. No, you don't know what you're doing.
Don't put them in prison. They like that.
No, don't put them in the stocks. No, Don't whip them. No.
No. And the next part, little confusing from what I've read, because it goes something like this. So even though Morathi is like imprisoned, and he's like, oh, forget her, forget the Cult of Pleasure, he secretly grants clemency to Morathi on the condition that she gives leadership of the Cult of Pleasure to him. So they're like kind of cool again. They're kind of working together again. And now Malekith has like this sort of secret army of cultists of pleasure from Slaanesh. So he's being a little unsavory at the moment. Also, there is a bit of a running gag that Morathi may have slept with Malekith more than once. Like, it's heavily implied from, I think it's an old fantasy, like, codex. I don't think they're called, I think they were just army books back then or something.
His mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, remember that Chaos Knight world we chatted about?
Yeah. Also, but from what I've heard, the elves don't super care too much about that, because I guess elves are, like, sort of, like, pseudo-perfect. So, like, there's nothing necessarily bad that's going to happen to their kids because all of their genes are perfect. But it's heavily implied in an army book, and then I think GW, like, retconned it a little bit, and they don't want to talk about it anymore because, that's a little weird. So, Cult of Pleasure is like, completely out of control still. Even though Malekith is like, oh, guys, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Malekith is like, hey, guys, we need to call a council meeting with all the princes and all the princesses, and we need to figure this out. We need to figure this out. And the idea was Malekith was going to be like, hey, give me control of all the armies of Ulthuan. Give me control of them. And wouldn't you know it, when they hold this big meeting, they find out that Phoenix King Belshazzar was dead from poison. Could you believe it?
No.
The Phoenix King, dead, poison.
I can't believe, what? No, how could he ever?
How could this happen?
Who could have done this?
And Malekith was like, oh, shoot, no Phoenix King? Guess I'll have to be Phoenix King then. But, much like you, the princes are like, dude, what are you even it's obvious you poisoned him. It's obvious you killed him. You're a son of a bitch. To which Malekith replied, well, he didn't reply anything. He just killed any prince who questioned him. And
Nice.
Yeah, I know, right? He's like, oh, really? Counterpoint. Stab. And a huge fight breaks out between malekith's like traitor cultists and these sort of like loyalist elves. Saying loyalist elves is weird, by the way. Loyalist elves.
Loyalist elves.
Seems weird. Anyway, during all of this fighting that has broken out, Malekith does something monumentally stupid. Remember how we talked about how Aenarion became Phoenix King? He has to walk through the fires of Asurion and show that he's worthy of the title of Phoenix King?
Yes.
To become Phoenix King, you have to do that. You have to. Every Phoenix King has to walk through the fires of Asurion to show that they are worthy of being the Phoenix King. And Malekith decides, you know what? If I'm going to be Phoenix King, I need to do that. Which, again, really speaks to how arrogant he has become. Because, he's like, okay, Phoenix King time. I am going to walk through the fires, and it's gonna be great, and I'm gonna be Phoenix King, and all that, hooray. So he does, and he steps through the fires of Asurion, and as soon as he does, the god Asurion, the Phoenix god, can literally see everything that he has done. He can see that he's been conspiring with chaos. He can see that he's been conspiring with the pleasure cult. He can see that he murdered the previous Phoenix King with poison. He sees all of the shenanigans that Malekith has been up to, and the fires of Asurion find Malekith unworthy.
Oh, and so he just burns to alive or whatever?
Yep. The fire burns the ever-loving piss out of Malekith and leaves him a charred, barely alive piece of beef jerky.
Oh, wait, he's still alive?
He's still alive. Morathi and some of their loyal followers were able to just barely save Malekith in the nick of time. So he is alive, barely, and he's not doing well, but he is alive.
Okay.
In unending pain and suffering from the sacred flames of Asurion, but he's alive.
Well, yeah, no shit. Clearly, he is not what we would call worthy.
Like I said, what did he think was going to happen? Was he, yeah, Asurion will see how powerful I am and how good I am for Ulthuan, and just completely ignore the fact that I am essentially worshipping chaos and killed the Phoenix King, and I don't know what that man thought was going to happen.
He thought what all Eldar think. Nah, I'd win.
Yeah. They, like I said, they are a prideful, arrogant bunch. And as you can imagine, all of Ulthuan is now engulfed in a brutal civil war. And a lot happens during it, but we're going to condense it down a little bit. So at this point, we are essentially going to call Malekith's forces the Druchii. They're the Dark Elves. And the normal elves, they're sort of like the High Elves. And we'll talk about the sort of what makes a dark elf in a minute. But very common meme for Malekith that I love and I would be remiss not to mention is that he is more or less the Dark Elf version of Darth Vader. He gets a little too big for his britches. He gets a little too arrogant. He gets burned to a crisp and is in never-ending pain and suffering from his wounds and burns. And much like Vader, Malekith actually gets fashioned this really dope-looking, magical black armor. And this black armor is literally fused to his body. He can't take it off, but it allows him to function again.
He looks so angry.
Oh, yes.
He looks like he's maulding it to it so hard.
Yeah.
Though he is pretty dripped out, though.
He is. He gets a bit of a power boost again. He's got his crazy the crown is fashioned into his helmet. And it does power him up a little bit. He's still in never-ending pain though, just like Darth Vader. Like the burns of Asurion just kind of never go away. I think I read that the armor might make it a little more like palatable, like it's not as mind-numbingly painful, but he still just constantly is feeling it. So at least he's allowed to take the battlefield again and fight against the High Elves in this just obliteratingly, mind-numbingly big civil war. But even still, even with malekith, their forces are kind of getting, I don't want to say bodied, because it's a big civil war, but they're losing. Even with his massive strength, even with Morathi's pleasure cults and all that, it's still, their backs are against the wall, and it's looking like Malekith's forces and the Druchii are probably going to lose. So, they're kind of like, we're out of options. Backs against the wall. You know what? If we're going down, we're taking all the elves with us. And they decide that they are literally going to try to break the great vortex that is keeping chaos at bay. And try as the elves might, because the elves got they got a little warning that that's what the Druchii were up to, and they're trying to set up all their defenses, they're trying to stop them, and actually, they can't stop Malekith and Morathi from breaking the great vortex, and for a short time, the great vortex stops, and it breaks, and it falls. But since the Great Vortex fell, that means, hooray, the Archmages and old Caledor Dragon Tamer are free from the Vortex, which, bad news for Malekith and Morathi, because now the High Elves have all of their Archmages, the best mages, and super, super juiced up Caledor, and they're able to not only drive off Malekith and Morathi, but they're able to restore the Great Vortex. But
so Malekith and them are being they're off to form their own society.
Yes. They've sort of built up their sort of, I think it's mostly along the coast. They've built up these castles, these dark castles, and very obviously sort of very, very dark elf-like,
Big spires.
Big spires, black and purple, you know.
All right.
But since the Great Vortex was down for a short time, it still had some kind of nasty side effects. Apparently there was this massive tidal wave that was 1,000 feet tall that swept over Ulthuan. And when the Great Vortex went down, there was this psychic shockwave that apparently the dwarves on the mainland could feel in their holds underground that pulsed out over Ulthuan. Shitloads of elves are dead. The tidal wave goes crazy. The shock wave is killing people. And another nasty side effect, because Morathi and Malekith still alive, but those castles and those settlements that they built, the tidal wave essentially is so strong that it literally rips those dark elf settlements and castles off of Ulthuan and sends them floating. A lot of their castles are literally floating in the ocean until they finally stop and end up taking shop in the north in a place called Nagaroth, the land of chill. Because it's frozen, not because it's good vibes or anything.
Okay, no, I gotta be honest. Looking at the picture Shai just posted, I think it's quite the opposite of good vibes. I consider that quite bad vibes.
Yeah. And so this is sort of where the separation of High Elf and the Druchii come from. This is what's known as the sundering. So now we have a proper place for the Druchii to sort of set up shop. So let's talk about what makes the Druchii like the Druchii, because they're kind of similar to their 40k counterparts, but not really. And I think this quote is a great way to start describing them. So the quote goes like this: "Who are they? They are sorrow, pain, misguided souls bound to darkness, led by a damned prince who refused to accept his true destiny and will one day suffer as no other because of it. They embrace chaos with open arms, and much of their botched society is given over to worship of Caine, the Lord of Murder. They live in fear, comforted only by the lies they repeatedly whisper to each other as they nurse old wounds. They are terrible. Seek them not. I will say no more.
So, not the best of friends.
No. Yeah, so the Druchii are a pretty vengeful bunch, and they are, like, forever trying to get back at the High Elves for the sundering. Like, there can literally never be any peace between them, which makes sense, because High Elf or Druchii, they're so full of themselves, I don't think either side would ever stand for negotiations or reintegration anyway. But much like their High Elf counterparts, as far as just age is concerned, they're still basically immortal, as fantasy elves are. They are just, as Shai said, enchantingly beautiful. While the High Elves normally have, like, blonde hair, the Druchii have black hair, and their skin is usually a more ghostly pale color, which I think they had before, but now they've set up shop in an icy hellscape with, like, no sun, so it kind of gets amplified a little bit. Another little interesting tidbit I was reading about the Druchii is apparently they constantly break alliances and friendships that they make because, well, they're Dark Elves, but also because apparently Dark Elves are such silver-tongued devils that they can basically talk their way out of any situation. So they love to manipulate, coerce, deceive, and otherwise be just giant dicks about everything just because, like, I can talk my way out of it. It doesn't matter. They also follow this creed of sort of like only the strong survive. That's kind of like their mentality, where it's like, if you're strong enough to take something from someone else, you deserve to have that thing, and good on you for taking it. Which makes sense because, yeah.
It's kind of like it's a little dwarven.
I guess that is a little dwarven, isn't it?
A little dwarven there, but I mean, for the most part, this is pretty clearly like the Druchii version of, like, it's Dark Elves. They love their torture and their murder and their silver-tongued devils who constantly backstab each other, basically.
Yep.
Okay, the classic.
Yep, and I think I'm going to talk about this later, but I think one of the funniest things I read about the Dark Elves was someone commented this or something somewhere. But since they don't really have to worry about, like, the whole Slaanesh thing, it was something like, yeah, you know, when a Dark Elf tortures you, they're doing it for the love of the game. They're not doing it because they have to, or because it prolongs their life, or it keeps them further. They do it for the love of the game, baby. They're do it for the love of the game.
The fun.
Yeah, they're doing it because they want to savor it. They don't have to do it. They just love it.
Okay, so they're a little worse.
They're actually a little worse because at least the Druchii have a reason for it. They're just like, nah, this is just fun.
I guess in fairness, the Druchii do love it too, in a way. But like, so are their torture methods as extensive?
I haven't seen a ton on their torture methods. Actually, I have to believe they're just as bad. They're not nice.
They're not. I can see that there wouldn't be nice, but also it's very much like, well, you know, like, okay, hey, this is clearly not a very good method. Like, oof, this is painful. But at the same time, like, is it turning like someone into a sofa for like 10,000 millennia or whatever?
Not that I have found. I think they're just really debaucherous and just really, you know, I'm fairly certain they don't do like the, I'm going to turn you into a towel for all of eternity and you're just going to be like, you know, they just do your standard fantasy torture, you know.
Okay, so just classic like whips and chains and treat their slaves like crap and, you know,
boy, to the Druchii, I did it. Damn it, the Druchii love having their slaves, because their whole empire was just. They're like, do you expect me to build stuff? No. Of course not. Slaves. We are going to enslave everyone around us, and they are going to build all of our stuff for us.
Wow, the repercussions of slave Leia in Return of the Jedi have had long-standing effects on a large amount of fantasy genre concepts.
Yeah, a little bit with that picture. Sure. But I mean, it all makes sense because now all of their worship is squarely around Caine, that cheerful lord of murder, violence, and war that we mentioned before. And they aren't supposed to allow the cult of pleasures to worship Slaanesh, like Malekith strictly forbids the worship of chaos. But Morathi does it anyway. And so do a bunch of Druchii in secret. The pleasure cults are still rolling around. I think it's mostly because it's his mother, and she's helped him out so much that he's like, I don't want to kill her, but oh God, she's being kind of a pain in the ass. And oh my God, just at least stay out of my business, Mom. So there are still bunches of pleasure cults. Also, I was reading that they're not above actually summoning chaos demons, even though they don't worship chaos. Because I think they have that mindset, like you said before, of I'd win. Chaos can't control me. I'd win. No big deal. I'd win.
So there is so unlike in this case in the Druchii, they don't fear worship. Well, they don't like to worship chaos, I assume, on a grand scale, but some do anyway, because there's not really a repercussion where they eat their souls immediately or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Can Malekith even kill his mom? Because he's I don't want to do it, but his mom seems really powerful.
I feel like if Malekith and Morathi 1v1'd, Malekith would body Morathi. I don't know if I'm just underselling Morathi because it seems like she is always getting imprisoned and beaten and whatever. So, a part of me is if Malekith wanted to, he probably could. She is super manipulative, that is true. I guess we've kind of been understating how manipulative and Slaaneshi she actually is, right? So, but still, it's Malekith though. So anyway, as you can imagine, Malekith, the Witch King, as he is now known, is the unquestioned ruler of the Druchii. You do not step to Malekith. You do not question his rule unless you want to die. And he has a posse of 100 trusted advisors called the Dread Lords, who are also people that you really don't want to screw with. And fun little fact about the Dreadlords, I had to mention, most of the Dreadlords got their position because of their bloodline, their lineage was super cool, Malekith respected them, but apparently, if you're a regular Dark Elf, you do something super amazing for Malekith, you gain a spot in the Dreadlords, and you obtain what is called the Writ of Iron. Couldn't find a picture of it.
WRIT?
Yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't find a picture of it, but I gotta believe it's actually a writ made of iron, like a big badge that you gotta wear on you at all times. And if you disappoint Malekith, or you fail, or you fall out of his favor, or something bad happens like that, they melt the writ of iron down until it is molten and pour it down your throat.
Oh, so it's basically
Yummy.
the golden, the melted gold thing, but this time you got to eat it.
Yeah, right down your throat. And,
I've heard, considering all the things the Dark Eldar do, I think I may have heard worse, but also holy shit.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's pretty, molten down the throat. Not great. And wish I could go into all their military forces, but we're already running a little late. But because the Druchii basically, for the most part, don't have to worry about the whole Slaanesh thing, they're totally okay with using black arts, magic, that kind of stuff. But only women are allowed to wield magic. Men are forbidden from using magic because there is a prophecy that states that Malekith will be overthrown by a male Druchii that is wielding magic. So to make sure this prophecy never happens, it's just men are not allowed to use magic. There is sort of an exception. They're called Doomfire Warlocks, but they're basically hollow, and they've had their souls kind of sucked out of them, or they're constantly getting sucked out of them by either Slaanesh or like malekith, and what little soul they have left, they can like constantly feel malekith's grip on. And so they're not really in a super happy fun place, but technically an exception. They also love making use of beasts like harpies, dragons, manticores, and hydras, to name a few. And there is one last event we have to talk about, because this is going to lead into the formation of the Wood Elves. So, we were talking how, like, the Druchii are never going to forgive the High Elves. They're always looking for an opportunity to just screw them over and just make the High Elves' lives a living hell. This event is kind of a big one, because the Druchii decide, you know what we're going to do to screw over the High Elves? We're going to dress up just like the High Elves, and we're going to start ambushing and killing dwarven caravans. And when we do, it's going to frame the High Elves, and it's going to destroy the relation between the dwarves and the High Elves. And so they start doing this. They start dressing up exactly like the High Elves, and they start going around and just murdering dwarven caravans. Naturally, dwarves pretty pissed about this, and they demand an explanation from the current Phoenix King, Caledor II, thinking that they were raided by High Elves. So they send an ambassador to Ulthuan, and the ambassador's like, what the fuck, man? What is this? And I know at this point I probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but man, the High Elves sure are pompous, egotistical, full of themselves pricks. Like way more so before. Like I said, they used to be compassionate. They used to coexist with the dwarves. They used to respect the dwarves. They were all about uniting people and learning and all that good stuff. But now, you know what Caledor II does to this dwarven ambassador that is looking for answers?
I just kill his ass.
No, he arguably does something worse.
Oh.
Since he doesn't know anything about the raids, he takes the questions by this dwarven ambassador as an insult. He absolutely refuses to investigate. He's like, I don't know anything about that. None of my people have done anything. Screw you. And he has the dwarven ambassador's beard shaved off. Which might...
Sorry, it's just like the way you said it. You said it with the same gusto as like he castrated him.
For a dwarf, that is castrating.
But you're right. Right? But you're right. For a dwarf, it is very much the same. But it's just really funny the way you said it.
But yes, and they shave his beard off and they just boot his ass out of Ulthuan. And as you can imagine, the once strong allegiance between the dwarves and the elves is now completely ruined. And this would begin what the dwarves would call the War of Vengeance! And the High Elves would call it the War of the Beard. Because they're such petty assholes.
That's so fun. Okay, I can't call the dwarves not petty in this situation also, though.
True.
I mean, dwarves are naturally excessively petty. That's the whole point.
True.
But they did basically do the worst possible thing they could do to them in a way.
Outside of yep.
They're both very petty. Ooh, okay. I wonder. Can I read this?
Read the quote. Go for it.
So much for this war of the beer. The stunted ones dared to challenge their betters and thus have been bloodied. They will think twice before assaulting our colonies again. Should they now sue for peace and come before me on their knees, we shall be magnanimous. But if they dare rise up against us again, we shall visit vengeance on them 1,000-fold. We shall root them out of their holes and drag them into the sunlight. We shall burn their mines and flood their holds. We shall seize their goods and make prisoners of their wives. Though what use one might have for such creatures, I have little idea. Caledor II.
Yeah. They're petty. They're petty. They're arrogant. They're full of themselves. They're not great right now. They're kind of sort of at their worst. This is like the worst the High Elves will be.
That's so funny, though.
To make this war kind of short and sweet, both sides kind of beat the shit out of each other, and they both do suffer a lot of losses, but the High Elves are by far the biggest loser here, because our boy, Phoenix King Caledor II here, the one that said that just lovely quote, he gets killed. He gets
Let's
bodied by the
go.
dwarves. Not only that, he gets killed. The dwarven king takes the phoenix crown off his head and keeps it for himself as a trophy.
Let's go. What a baller.
Let's go. It is also at this point that now the Druchii are like, lol, got him, and they invade Ulthuan. Which Ulthuan at this point is like, oh shit, not them again. And their forces are already kind of beaten up, so they need to recall literally every elven force that has like made their home on the mainlands. Like, you guys gotta come back home because Ulthuan needs you. The Dark Elves are back. Oh my god, what are we gonna do? And while a lot of elves did return home to the mainland, there were a lot of elves that were just like, no, I don't wanna. I made my home here. I was born on the mainlands. I don't have any ties to Ulthuan. I don't feel like I have to defend Ulthuan. I'm good here. You do your own shit. You made your bed, lie in it. And the ones that do not return home would go on to become the Wood Elves. And the Wood Elves' whole goal is very, very unlike the Druchii and the High Elves. Wood Elves, they just want to be left alone. They don't want any of this nonsense. They don't want any of this BS. And when the High Elves had all retreated back to Ulthuan and left the would-be elves on their own, they had to really quickly find shelter because the dwarves are still out for elven blood. They don't care what kind. If you are elven and a dwarf finds you, they are looking for blood still. And of course, you still got the greenskins, you got the Skaven, chaos is still roaming around, so the Wood Elves need to find shelter, and so they find shelter in this sort of magical forest known as Aethel Loren, which I think is kind of bordering Bretonnia and the Empire a little bit. It's kind of like in between them. And of course, this forest, like I said, is magical, and time works very differently here. You could go to Aethel Loren and spend hours just aimlessly wandering around, and you'd come out only to realize, wow, only minutes have passed around in the real world. Conversely, you could wander around and be like, oh, it feels like it's only been like 3 minutes. You come out, and it's like, oh my god, it's been like 20 years. And from what I could tell, there are also some regions of Aethel Loren that are literally locked in time. Like, there are regions that are just never-ending autumn, never-ending summer, never-ending winter, and some places are just like perpetually night. And the Wood Elves kind of see themselves as like the only sane and rational elves left in the world. Like, they left Ulthuan before everything got kooky crazy. So they're not quite as arrogant and pricklish as the High Elves are right now, who think they can control everything. They aren't douchebag assholes like the Druchii, who are on a revenge tour that they could probably never actually achieve. They just want to be left alone in their cute little magical forests. And they're basically governed the way Ulthuan was before all the shit hit the fan, so they have like their little separate regions that are led by like their princes and their princesses, and everyone is under the rule of two people named Ariel and Orion, who, since Aethel Loren is timeless, they are known as the now and forever king and queen of the forest, and they are the avatars of the god of nature Isha. And
wait, same name?
Same name, brother.
God damn it.
Same name. And the god of the hunt, Kurnos.
Okay, that one's the least different.
That is different. But yeah, we got it. We got it, Isha.
So, I mean, these are basically just like the Exodites in a way.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
More or less.
Are they
just,
also the ones that have the giant, like tree ent units and stuff? Or
Yep. That would be them. Would be them.
Hell yes. That's such a cool looking vibe.
Yeah, the Trent monsters are very, very cool. But this also means that the Wood Elves have become extreme isolationists, and they are massively paranoid of anything that would disrupt their home or like their way of life. Like, I was talking with Shai about this before, and it's like the whole rest of the world could be on fire and be just withering away, but as long as their little Aethel Loren is untouched and fine, they don't give a fuck. That as long as you just leave them alone, they don't care what's going on. That might be a slight over exaggeration, but they are just leave us alone. Just leave us alone.
I mean, at this point, why would they even care?
True.
You know?
Yeah, true. But the Wood Elves are also known for being like the most proficient archers ever. Like, they are just the most kicking archers that have ever existed, and naturally, as we said, they do have kind of a lot of foresty creatures that they like to roll out in battle. Living trees, treemen, forest spirits, dryad. They have tree dragons and stuff like that. So, you know, you kind of get the idea of what Wood Elves are. And since we've been going a little long here, we'll wrap it up here, and at the end, I think, like, one of the biggest takeaways is that the elven race as a whole is, like, completely fractured. Like, they've split into 3 different factions that are all kind of at each other's throats. They've all got different goals. None of them want to reintegrate. The High Elves aren't doing great right now because their forces had got absolutely clobbered in the War of the Beard, and what little forces they have remaining are always at civil war with the Druchii. The Druchii are also kind of effed because they have that lunatic malekith ruling over them, and they're never willing to unite. And then you have the Wood Elves who are just like, yeah, no, I don't want anything to do with either one of you. You know what? No, I don't want anything to do with any of you. So you have the High Elves who are just sort of withering away a little bit. You know, they're sort of like, oh no, we're never going to recover from this. Like, they're still pompous and they probably still think they're the best, but they're like, oh no, we're kind of oof. Druchii are the Druchii, and the Wood Elves are just like, nope, don't want it. Honestly, so this is sort of the state of the elves right now.
Honestly, the regular elves almost seem like they kind of went by the wayside a little bit at this point, especially considering that what's his buckets, Caledor II, got his ass hit. If anything, the Druchii are the ones, which is also funny because now I know where Druchii Violet comes from, the paint.
Oh yeah.
Now I get it now. The Druchii, if anything, seem a bit more interesting, all things considered.
Actually, yeah.
They're actually much more interesting than the regular elves, if I'm being perfectly honest.
They are. I think the Druchii are actually the most interesting ones. The Wood Elves are kind of cool, but they're the Druchii are the best. You want to read the quote?
Sure.
That Shai has.
They are an ancient race with powerful armies and even grander magic, building a glorious and almighty civilization. Yet, their noble and compassionate nature, which was once one of the elves' greatest and most noble character traits as a people, was soon replaced by a great sense of pride and hubris in their own superiority. In their blind arrogance, they have only succeeded in shattering their once powerful friendship with the dwarves, culminating in the War of the Beard, which only crippled these 2 Eldar races and shattered whatever bright future there was for this young world. Isolated and alone in a world they could no longer control, the High Elves are facing the twilight years of their existence, their cities no longer bustling with vibrancy and life as they used to be, but now serving as a gloomy reminder of their ultimate impending demise. Yep. So, the High Elves picked a fight they couldn't win and are now all very much in Craft World Eldar type style, where they are in slowly, I'm assuming, just like a very fractured race. And then the Druchii are out there having a good time. In fact, what are the Druchii like, besides infighting, what's their main weakness? Because they don't have to like prolong their lives to fear Slaanesh. They just gotta hang out.
I think their main weakness is probably like their own. It's. I feel like it's a very elf thing where it's like they're their own worst enemies, right? Because they're also going to be just trying to pick fights they can't win. There's going to be a lot of infighting. So I feel like they're kind of their own worst enemies, and they're also going to pick a lot of fights that they can't win.
So the classic case of them constantly backstabbing each other and politicking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And obviously they're not going to like Shai said, they're backstabbing bastards, hating each other, and they're hated by every other race in existence, right?
Wait, their only ally is the Skaven? Wait, how did they ally with the Skaven? Did I miss that part of the episode?
I did not hear about them allying with the Skaven. They trade Warpstone for slaves.
That's hilarious. Okay, fair point.
And honestly, since they have no allies, that's probably going to come back to bite them because they don't have like an infinite force. So, yeah, and all the High Elves are kind of just stuck on Ulthuan because they've already recalled everyone. So it's not like they have a spanning empire anymore. So the High Elves are kind of just stuck on Ulthuan, where they've kind of screwed up their way of life. And yeah.
Meanwhile, the Wood Elves are just like doing the Akira meme where they're like, "Leave me alone."
Pretty much. They just want to be left alone. Mom, close the door on the way out, please. Don't let anyone in.
Oh,
the danger sign on their door.
Burn it down. Burn it all down.
Yep. In their timeless forest. But that's our primer on the elves.
Hell yeah. All right. It's about what I expected. Minus a plus and minus a couple things. I really like the main guy. The caine guy on your Aenarion.
Everybody loves Aenarion. He's pretty good, yeah.
Aenarion's great. Aenarion's super neat. He seems like, much like Sigmar, one of the few people that mostly had his head on straight. He clearly got corrupted and made some bad decisions, don't get me wrong, but he did it for good reasons. I'm not gonna lie.
Paved with good intentions.
I'm not gonna lie. I like the Druchii. I don't know.
I do not blame you. They're kind of interesting. Like, it's same reason as why you would like the Druchii in 40K. Kind of the same vibe.
I really like the Druchii in 40K ever since reading the Big Daka. It gave me a way bigger appreciation for them.
Fair enough.
That being said, I did always like them more than Craft World. You know me and my thoughts on regular elves.
I do.
But it's just, I don't know, I kind of liked the road that the Druchii went with. It was just like malekith just being insufferable and like all they got the cults of pleasure and stuff, and just, I don't know, it's so petty. It's so petty.
Nah, you just saw Morathi's armor and you were like, "Yep, I'm on board. Let's go." I do like that Morathi. Yeah.
Pick one, DK. Is it buff, fully armored mommies, or is it skimpy clad goth? Pick one, DK. You can't make fun of me for both.
Oh, I get. Well, yeah. Yes, I can. Who says I can't?
Yeah, you can. I like both. It's fine.
Yeah. Hey, and based actually, right?
Me standing at the road with the two forks in it with Karlach and Shadowheart. Do I embrace my new love, or do I return to late 2000s emo scene skater girls that ruined my life? Pick one.
You've fallen for Karlach, huh?
They're both great. They're both lovely. Every character.
I never liked Shart.
Shart is fun because she's a little like a little basic in the beginning, but she's got some sass. She got some good sass.
She does. She has good reason to have sass, because like I always didn't like her because it was like, "Oh, what's that thing you're holding?" She's like, "Mind your own business." So
That's
elves,
true.
We did it.
I love. I won't lie. Huge dwarf W.
Did Bricky die?
What?
Oh, sorry. The Discord voice thing just died.
Discord's being weird today.
I was like, what happened, Bricky?
So, I mean, like, the dwarves, a huge dwarf W, you shaved off a dwarf's beard and they, like, lead a genocidal campaign against you. Love that.
Yep.
Absolutely love that to death.
Read this. What are we reading? Feel good fact. Before Caledor II dies, he stands on his knees and begs the Dwarf King for mercy, which he doesn't get. Oh, does he really? Huge dwarf dub.
Huge elf L. Let's go.
Man, let's go.
Let's go.
Especially after that shit he said before about, what do you need with the dwarf wife? Oh, if they beg me for... I'll eat shit, Caledor.
I mean, you can't spell elf without L.
Yeah, we end it there.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.